Hi everybody, Jane from Plain Jane here, and I've got a quick and easy project for you today, something that looks great around the home. I'm just going to transform some old tired pots and turn them into a bit of a sort of clay finish, old rustic pot. So I'm going to be using some texture and layering up some different colours, and they're going to look amazing. So I'll show you the pieces I've got. They're just from the salvos, so this was just $4. I thought it would work really well with this project because it's kind of got an irregular shape, so I thought that's going to look really good, like a rustic old style pot. And then I've got this glass jug, and yes, you can paint glass with the paint, which is very exciting. So the main thing is you just need to wash really well so that there's no greasy spots on there, especially because these have come from the salvos, so I don't know what they've been used for. So I've given them a really good wash, and then I'm just going to put a base coat on them first, and then we can start layering up some colours. So we're going to use the same set of colours on both pots, but they're going to turn out looking a bit different because I'm going to use, although this is black already, I'm going to paint it in our colour Licorice, which is this gorgeous black. This is a very gungy old tin, which is actually perfect because I kind of want texture, so that's going to work well. So I'm going to do a coat of Licorice on here because I just want to get rid of that sheen. We're going for a rustic finish, and that sheen just isn't going to work. So I'm just going to put a base coat of Licorice on that one, and then on the jug I'm going to put a base coat of Mallow, which is the off-white, and then we'll start building up some texture and layers. Okay, so I'll just get started. So I applied a nice thick layer of the paint, and I wasn't too concerned about the finish at all because texture is exactly what I'm going for here. So I'm just going in any direction and just putting the paint on pretty haphazardly. Don't be like me and paint the base of your piece, because then you'll find it's hard to paint the inside when you have to stand it up again. Now for the glass jug, I did a base coat in the colour Mallow, which is a beautiful off-white, and I also painted the inside of the jug too. So the most important thing when you're painting glass or any really shiny surface is that you need to basically just let the paint do its thing and let it dry properly and let it cure. So I'm going to give this a good couple of hours to dry before I go on to the next stage. And it's actually really hot here today, so the paint's drying very quickly. So if you're somewhere where it's very cold or damp, then you might want to wait a bit longer. Essentially, the longer the paint cures for on a surface with any paint, it's going to adhere better as it gradually starts to cure and grip onto that surface. So when it's a really shiny surface, the longer you leave it, the better, basically. So anyway, I'm going to go and have coffee, and then I'm going to come back later, and we're going to get some texture onto these pieces and layer up some colours. I couldn't resist. I'm going to do a third one. So I've got this pot, and a friend of mine challenged me to painting kind of a rusty red type clay finish. So I'm going to try and it'll be the same technique, but I'm going to do it on this one. So these two are going to be more kind of neutral colours, and then this one we're going to go with a kind of rusty red type clay. So we'll see how it turns out. Okay, so the pots have all dried. And this is how they are looking. So this is the Licorice. I actually really like it, even though it's still the same colour really as it was black before, but I just really like that matte finish. It really suits it, and yeah, it's going to look really good. So that's the Licorice. This is the jug, that I did with mallow, and then the parchment on this one. So that's just had one coat. And it's a little bit patchy, but that's fine because we're going to put some more on now, and we're going to add some texture into it. So I'm using the texture medium, and I've decanted my paint because you don't want to mix the texture medium into your paint can, because then you're going to be left with a load of gloopy paint which you might not want. So decant what you think you're going to need. So I've just put some in this bowl, and I'm going to mix some texture medium in. So you want approximately equal amounts texture medium to paint. Just going to spoon it in. So you can see it's not really dripping off the spoon. It's nice and thick, but we can still kind of move it around. Now, I'm going to put some gloves on for the next bit. You don't have to, but it's going to get pretty messy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to rub the texture all over. I'm not stippling it on with a brush because I don't want little tiny peaks. So now, let me show you. I've just got it on my hands, and I'm just going to smear it around basically. Because what we're trying to achieve is the look that this is just made of old sort of earthenware or clay, so it wouldn't have a smooth surface. Oh, this is so fun. So I covered the whole pot with the thick paint, just patting it on and then smoothing it out with the palm of my hand. Now, I'm just going to go around like touching it with the glove, and that's just going to create a few sort of raised peaks. So I did the whole pot and trying to use the palm of my hand rather than my fingers so that I didn't get any finger marks in the paint. So for the other two pots, I mixed up the texture with the colour Dusty Donkey, and I applied it in exactly the same way, patting and smoothing it. And in this case, I left some patches bare on purpose so that it would look as though the layers had chipped off. So you can see where you've got the kind of raised texture, and then the colour underneath is showing through. It looks like it's kind of chipped away there, and that bit's just showing through. I think that's looking pretty good already. We've got more layers to come, so I'm going to let this dry and then we'll build up some more layers. I put my pots out in the hot sun to dry them very quickly, which caused this lovely cracking effect in the layers of thick texture. You don't have to do that, but if you want to and you don't have a hot sun where you are, then you can do the same thing by using a hot hairdryer over the thick layers of paint. So for our licorice pot, I've got two more colours that I'm going to apply, and the first one is Flotsam and a little bit of Mud Pie, which is that lovely chocolatey brown colour. I'm not going to use a paintbrush. I'm going to, well, I've got a couple of things. I'm going to use, this is just an old shopping bag. So just a plastic shopping bag I've ripped up, and then I've sort of scrunched it up basically, so it's going to create texture. And the other thing I've got is a sea sponge. So it really doesn't matter, you don't have to have a sea sponge, you can just use anything really. You could use a rag, paper towel, anything you've got around the house basically that's just going to create a bit of texture and look a bit imperfect when you apply the paint and not look like it was put on with a paintbrush basically. So that's the secret to getting that kind of authentic finish, is to just avoid using a paintbrush at all. Okay, so first of all, let's go on with a little bit of the mud pie with my scrunched up shopping rag. See, so it's just going to be very random. I'm not going to cover the whole thing. Go around randomly dabbing it on, and then we'll add in a bit of the flotsam. Now I've decanted the paints because I'm just going to be dipping this in and out of the two pots. The colours are going to mix and blend together, but that is totally fine because then you create all these different new colours basically, and that's where you get the sort of interest and depth to the finish. So I'm just going to concentrate the darker colour around the bottom a little bit more. I think when you're trying to make something look old, I always tend to do the colours down the bottom more weighted at the bottom, because if you think about something aging, then obviously the sort of wear would wear down. I suppose if you had like water running down, or if it's been sitting in old water or something like that, then you're going to get more of the aging at the bottom of whatever the piece is. So concentrating that around here. And you can just have fun. You absolutely do not have to worry about how you are applying this. There is no rhyme nor reason to it. Just have fun, basically. You know, this is my favourite way to paint, of course. If you know me or have been following me, then you know that this is what I love doing. Okay, so that's the mud pie. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of the flotsam. I'm just still using the same old screwed up bag. So you can see the colours are just going to kind of mix together on the surface. And now I'm just going to start applying that. It's kind of landing and picking up on the high points. Now I'm just going to move it in that direction, a bit like we did with the texture. You can see how it's kind of mixing and blending a bit together. See how it's starting to have that real stone effect now? It's looking really good. I'm happy with this. So I just kept building up the layers with the bag, turning it over every now and then so that I didn't end up with a flat surface. Also, if your colours start to blend together a bit too much, you can obviously just let it dry for a minute and then come back on and start building up the layers again after that. Now I did the same thing with the jug. I used the same colours, but I did add in a little bit of the colour parchment, which is that lovely sort of creamy colour, just to lighten this one up a little bit. So I just wanted to show you, although it is quite random the way I'm putting the paint on, there is a little bit of intention to it, especially on this jug. You can probably see I've tried to keep the darker colour, the mud pie, around the bottom, and then I actually used a little detailing brush and stabbed it in there so I could get it right into the corners. because I think if this was an old jug, then obviously these areas would get more sort of a build up of dirt and grime, and so it just gives it that little bit more authenticity. I sealed my pots with a clear matte top coat, and I just watered it down just by about 10% to make sure it was nice and runny, because I didn't want it catching in the areas of texture, so it was just easier to apply it when it was nice and thin like that. And I just applied a nice thin coat all over, and that was it. So this is how the pots turned out. I'm really happy with the way they look. I think I love that texture and the way the paint's picked up on it. You'll notice there is one missing. I didn't get time to do the terracotta pot, so that one will be coming up in a part 2 of this video, so watch out for that one coming soon.